Again, I'm not for chaos, I'm not for ignorance, and I'm not for wasting people's times. I believe the pastor should study to show himself approved, and I believe that the time that people give us there and the investment that they give by their tithe and their offerings, and we talked about tithe, but in their offerings and their donations, their time should be, they should receive something from what they're investing in, as well as the communication side, the revelation side, the friendship side, and the community side of what the local church is really all about. So today we're going to talk about how we shifted, how the charismatic church shifted. How I watched it shift. I was a part of the shift. I embraced the shift. Some of the shifts, not the other word, some of the shifts. I embraced it. I embraced those. I wanted a coffee shop. I wanted people to connect. It's not about just having coffee versus prayer. You can still have prayer pre-service, the coffee shop opening up. So there are alternatives to some of these observations that we make. And it really depends on where our heart is. If we don't want to pray and we want to have coffee, that's a whole different issue. If we do want to pray, we just have prayer and corporate prayer before the coffee shop opens. That's fine. But when when coffee shops and pre-service jargon and just conversation replaces prayer and what God can do in the spirit when our hearts are ready, I'm not for that. So again, we talked about what we talked about yesterday. Here is where we're going today. We shifted in the charismatic movement. Well, during the charismatic movement is when we shifted to mega church. I personally like a larger church. I like both. I don't mind what size church I preach in. I can preach to 10, I can preach to 100, I can preach to 1,000, and I can preach to 10,000. I like a bigger crowd. I don't like coliseums. I would say I like a bigger church community than a small one. And as we break those communities down into smaller groups, then community happens. I believe the local church is all about Jesus, all about believers growing, having a healthy church, and the benefits of fellowship and friendship and community, having someone to talk to, having someone to share your life with, having friends there. And the number one reason that people stay in church is not because of the preaching or the worship leader, it's because of their friends. And we need to know that. Friendship and community was all a part of what Jesus modeled for us as he chose 12 disciples, and they lived and shared their lives together in the form of community. And so that's what the local church is all about. I have friends. I'm having a lunch with a pastor today. I have very close friends in ministry. I love hanging with my close friends. We do community together. We do ministry together, and we do some life together by breaking bread together and just sharing our lives and our struggles. That's what the church is really all about. What we've made it, where it has developed, where it's gotten away from community, where it's gotten away from Jesus, when it's gotten away from sound biblical doctrine, when it's gotten away from preaching the actual Bible and when the mega church started in the 90s and went into the 2000s, what happened there, the larger churches were once evangelistic, and when the bigger the crowds became, the more we became aware of the crowd, and to keep the crowd, we began preaching on emotional wellness and personal wellness above evangelism and above preaching the Bible. That's what I'm not for.